President Trump dug in on his threat to send National Guard troops to other Democratic-run cities as part of his federal crackdown on crime. Specifically, he's singling out Chicago and Baltimore. Let's listen.
I'm willing to go to Chicago, which is a big trouble, but we have a governor that refuses to admit he has problems, huge problems. Baltimore, Wes Moore was telling me I want to walk with the president. Well, I said, I want to walk with you too someday, but first you got to clean up your crime because I'm not walking in Baltimore right now. Baltimore is a hellhole.
With us now is Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He is the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. So thank you so much for being with us. You told my colleague Pamela Brown yesterday that you thought this military invasion, as you called it, is backfiring on Trump. How so? Because he certainly does not think it is backfiring. He clearly thinks it's working for him.
Well, it cuts against the deepest principles of the country. I mean, we were founded in opposition to a standing army, with a fear of a standing army, and the military is not supposed to be used for ordinary law enforcement purposes. In D.C., he was talking about cleaning up the graffiti and, dealing with the blight of homelessness, which are obviously local, not federal issues. And he's trying to militarize our society, intimidate his political opponents. The whole idea of picking cities based on their partisan leadership is absurd. I mean, there are lots of Republican cities and towns struggling with crime. Everybody is across the country. Always, crime has always been part of our history, and yet crime is down. In D.C., for example, it's at a 30-year low. It's down in Baltimore, it's down in Chicago. But the point is that in our system of federalism, the different branches of government and the different departments of government are supposed to work together. If Donald Trump thinks he's got some great ideas for Chicago or Miami or Houston, Texas or whatever, he should call a summit for the White House and say, hey, here's some ideas where the feds can work together with states and localities, not have a series of rolling National Guard invasions of people's cities.
And a lot of what you said may be true. And certainly there was a lot of suspicion of a standing army when the country was founded. That is a tradition in America. But at the same time, our White House reporter Elena Treen is reporting that Trump is looking at what's happening in D.C., for instance, especially now that the Guard is armed. They're walking around with their weapons, and he's reveling in these pictures. Again, he does not see this as backfiring. He is reveling in these images.
Well, you can look at his poll numbers, I suppose, if you want some vaguely objective measure of it, and clearly he's way underwater. But what I'm seeing is that the people who live in these states, who live in these communities, are deeply offended by it. I mean, is Donald Trump really more interested in public safety in Chicago or Washington than the people who live in those cities? It's hard to believe. I mean, that cuts against the whole idea of local government. The reason that we elect mayors and city councils is so they can embody the priorities of the people. Now, in D.C., he took away $1 billion in locally raised revenue that the people in D.C. had set aside to do crime fighting and criminal justice and public education. They want their money back. People in Chicago, they've got their own ideas about what should happen. Like the mayor and the governor said yesterday, we've got a problem with guns here. Why don't we have a universal violent criminal background check, which more than 90% of the American people support? If you want to get together on a national agenda on crime fighting, let's do it, right? We have the Brady Gun Safety Act, and it's working, but there's loopholes in it. People are still able to get guns on the internet or at a gun show extravaganza. There are different ways people are getting it. We should have a violent felon criminal background check for everybody who's purchasing a gun. That's something the feds could actually do in cooperation with the states and local governments to make America safer. But that would require cooperation and not the series of, staged theatrical confrontations that Donald Trump is looking for.
Purportedly, the objective is about crime. What do you think his objective is in doing this?
Well, one thing he's clearly doing is changing the subject from a different form of crime, which is child sex trafficking, which Jeffrey Epstein was a mastermind of, that Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of and sentenced to jail for 20 years of, and Donald Trump's name apparently appears throughout the Epstein file. He had run on a platform promising to release the Epstein files. Then he had 1,000 FBI agents searching through the files, poring over them to look for his name, to look for photographs, to look for video glimpses of him. And then when they came back and reported him, he said, "We're not releasing this." And we have a strong bipartisan majority in Congress demanding the release of the Epstein files. So this is a convenient and irrelevant distraction from that for him. But I think, look, there are significant levels of criminality taking place within his own administration, right? There's a lot of corruption taking place. So all of this.
But Americans also, they do have concerns about crime, even if you look at statistics showing that it's going down.
Nobody more than the mayors and the council people and the police chiefs.
Certainly, no doubt,
Yes.
and people who live in these communities.
Yes.
But he sees opportunity. So how do Democrats counter that? And why have they not been able to effectively counter that? Even as statistics have gone down, you're seeing people actually worried even more about crime in their communities.
Well, look, I mean, if you're the victim of a crime, you don't care what the general rates are. I mean, crime could be falling, but if, your car is carjacked, if your house is robbed, if you're the victim of a scam, then you feel it just as much as if crime were going up, right? It's the same thing from your perspective. So let's have a national crime summit with the mayors, with the governors. Let's get everybody in Congress on both sides of the aisle to come together to deal with it. I'm part of a bipartisan anti-scam task force because a lot of my constituents have been scammed by these rip-off artists, and yet the Trump administration has been dismantling a lot of the infrastructure that we use to deal with it, just like they've been dismantling the infrastructure that fights human trafficking. They've cut funds from the Department of State, from the Department of Justice. And I think, the people out in Chicago were raising this just yesterday. They cut hundreds of millions of dollars from local police departments and victim assistance organizations and crime-fighting civil society groups because one Doge guy just said we should cut these hundreds of millions of dollars in grants. That was money that was approved by the House, by the Senate, signed into law by the president, and Doge cut it, and we want those hundreds of millions of dollars restored. Just like I know the people in D.C., they want their $1 billion restored. That's locally raised revenue that was taken away from them. So there's a lot we can do if we're going to be serious about it, and it's not just a bunch of photo ops.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you so much for being with us.
You bet.
Really appreciate it.